Yesterday we finished Perik Yud A's. The last thing we learned was how the very existence of Yesh Mi'ayin, something phenomenal. Number one, because it's beyond our comprehension. It's not within our capacity to grasp something that doesn't even exist in our realm. And the second thing is the fact that Yesh Mi'ayin is a paradox in itself. And on one hand, the ayin is as distant from the yesh as could be. On the other hand, much more than ilu v'olu. On the other hand, the yesh, the ayin is connected to the yesh infinitely more than the ilu is connected to the ol. If you phrase it that way, you hear more the paradox. Again, the ayin is distant from the yesh, infinite distance. It's a different realm, a different world, a different kind of existence, a different caliber of existence. And the yesh can't even exist in that realm. That's why it's called ayin. So it's as distant as can be. On the other hand, the ayin and the yesh are so connected infinitely more than the ilu v'ol, because the yesh can't exist for 1 second without the ayin. When a person thinks into this and they see the greatness of Hashem, it should give them chayas and joy and pleasure. Naturally, there has to be some sort of refinement in the person that these kind of things give you pleasure. But just like people get pleasure from gashmistic things, when you see a place that's a beautiful place, mountains and rivers and trees and whatever it is that you see, the more beautiful it is, the more excited you are, the happier you are, it puts you in a great mood because you appreciate those things. And the same thing with anything else. If you appreciate it, then the greater it is, the more the appreciation. So naturally, before a person could react this way, there has to definitely be some sense of appreciation of godliness, and then this is abundance will do it. So if a person has no appreciation of godliness whatsoever, would hear all this and it wouldn't move the person because they don't appreciate the whole subject b'chlal. But if a person has an appreciation of Hashem and then thinks into the greatness of Hashem, that'll bring the simcha. Okay, so let me just see if there's something we need to do here. I want to go over the questions. That'll be a summary of this chapter. So just for a moment, let's turn to page 76 and go over the 5 questions. 76. Whatever we see here in the questions is just repeating what I just said in different words. But again, when it has to be phrased in a certain way, it becomes more clear. In which situation is the creative force be'ein hareich, which means immeasurably greater than the creation? Is it an ilu v'ol or yesh mi'ayin? So obviously yesh mi'ayin. In which situation is the creative force withdrawn from the creation? That it's removed from it, it's distant from it. In ilu v'ol or yesh mi'ayin? And the third question is, in which situation is the creation more dependent on its creative force? The answer is yesh mi'ayin. So basically, this is the paradox part, number 2 and number 3, that the creative force is far away from the yesh as could be, and the creative force is so much closer to the yesh, much more than ilu v'ol. So number 4, meditation on Hashem's creating yesh mi'ayin stimulates simcha, because it's so phenomenal and so much more amazing than ilu v'ol. Give the 2 reasons. So what we learned was, one reason is the whole idea of yesh mi'ayin in general. To create something out of nothing is beyond our comprehension. We have nothing in our realm that we could compare it to. And the second thing is because Yesh B'ayin in itself is a paradox. It's a contradiction how these two things go together. It's as far as could be and it's as close as could be at the same time. Without the closeness, it couldn't exist, and without the distance, it couldn't exist. I want to explain this point, the second point, a little bit clearer. One more point to add to it. Something which we didn't discuss before, a little bit deeper, why we're saying that it's such a paradox. Usually when we say that Hashem is concealed, usually when something is concealed, it means that to a certain extent, it doesn't reach me. Let me give you a simple example. If there's something in the room, it's covered up. You don't see it. Someone intentionally wanted to hide it from me, so they covered it up. So it's concealed. But what does really concealed mean? Normally, when I walk into a room and there are things in the room, the image of whatever it is reflected in my eyes, so I see it. If there's something in the room that's covered, then there's actually nothing that's coming to my eyes. And there's no connection between this book, which is covered, and my eyes because there's something hiding it. If a person's in the room and he's hiding in a closet, the reason why I don't see him because the door of the closet is actually blocking that there's no connection between him and my eyes. If a person wants to conceal what they're saying from other people and therefore they speak softly, they speak so low that no one could hear. Same thing again. It doesn't reach my ears. Even a teacher and a student, if he has something very deep and he feels the students won't be able to understand it, so he has to conceal it and hide it and water it down. That means to a certain extent, the real deep concept never reaches their conscious mind because it's hidden. Is it possible for me to stand in front of someone else and conceal myself? Say, I don't want you to see me. Or to speak loud and say, I don't want you to hear me. That's not humanly possible. The definition of concealment really means that to a certain extent, I never reach the sort of the receptacle of the recipient. I never get there. It doesn't come there. That's why he doesn't see it. When we say that Hashem is hidden from the yesh, it's not that Hashem's presence is not in it, because if it wouldn't be in it, it couldn't exist. So it has to be in the person, the animal, the object. And not only in it, but in every fiber of its being. There's not one decimal in it that can exist without Hashem. So therefore, if you think of it, on one hand, we have to say it's so distant because it would be revealed it couldn't exist. On the other hand, it has to be in every single detail of it, otherwise it couldn't exist. And it's in it. And these are mamish, two opposites at the same time. No?
Well, yeah. I just thought like a question. It might not make sense.
Getting something?
But like, how is it a paradox even that like we know this? Because then it's like, if it's so concealed, like how are we able to know it? Like, but we know it.
We know it because we're taught so in Torah. When you look at a yesh, you don't know anything. When you look at a person or an animal, an object, you don't even know that it's coming from Hashem altogether.
Right.
You just see an object, and it looks as if you say in Yiddish, in Hebrew, kan nimtze kan hoya, it just appeared because it's just here. The earth is here, the trees are here. We don't see a creative force that made it.
So literally, without Torah, that knowledge
We
would not
wouldn't
be
know this.
accessible
Yeah.
to anything like to
Right.
creation.
Right. I mean, of course, you can say that a big philosopher would philosophize, how is there a world? There must be a creator, and then go on that the creation must be this way, yesh me'ayin, and then maybe reach that point. But in general, it's something we know from Torah.
But like the only reason why a philosopher could even have those thoughts is because Torah
Revealed it.
and
Yes.
revealed it.
Right. Correct.
So, okay.
What's the main point of this chapter? This is a tricky question. What's the main point of the chapter?
2 ways to say the chapter.
Oh, you got it. Most of the time people say the main point is Yesh Mi'ayin and how Yesh Mi'ayin is created. No, that's just an example. The main point is that there's one way of serving Hashem through Simcha. Finished. This is explaining what is it, what kind of davening is it that leads to Simcha. But that's the main point. And the next chapter, Yud Gimel, which we're going to start now, is the main point there is how a person could daven and it generate not Simcha, but the feelings of bittul and other kind of feelings of awe, as we'll soon see. Let me just see if there are any terms we wrote down from Perek Yud Beis.
Do you think it's actually like realistic that every day when you daven that you're gonna daven with simcha? Like it's just that's I don't know. Sometimes like davening like when you have like a tsaris or something that's like really like it actually you're not so simcha, but you're
Okay, our avodah is at least not to be not b'simcha. That's easier. To generate simcha, to actually feel a sensation of joy, you need much more meditation. You have to be more relaxed. You have to be able to be more into it. But at least not to be not b'simcha. Unfortunately, davening turns out to be the perfect time to think about everything and anything that's going wrong in my life, because I have some free time here. And instead of thinking about the words of davening, I'm thinking about, oh, I'm going to work soon, what's going to be with my boss, on this or that. So at least during davening, and especially, in other words, simcha doesn't always mean that I'm jumping out of my skin from joy. Even if a person says some words that it gives them a certain, even a little bit of a sense of pleasure, that's what we're working towards. That person deserves simcha. So on page 90, we have the phrases and terms that come out of Yud Beis. Yesh Mi'ayin is something I think that you've been knowing this for a long time, but Ilavala is a little bit of a new term, so we know now what Ilavala means. If you'd have to translate it, it would be cause and effect. Any two things that one is the cause and one is the effect. Page 90. And number 3, number 4, and number 5 are all connected. Richuk ha'erech, be'erech, be'ein arech. What does that mean? So anyone can tell me, or should I just explain it? Try somebody? Right. Okay, so number 3, number 5 are really the same. It means when the distance between two things is immeasurable. That's be'ein arech. Number 4, be'erech means that even though they're distant from each other, but it's a distance that is measurable. There's some common denominator between the two. The distance between, let's say, a child and a parent is a difference in 20-something years, because this same child in 20 years will be just like the parent. When you talk about the distance between, let's say, a human being and an angel, it's be'ein arech. There's no common denominator between them. And that's the term that's found very often in Sichos, Maimarim, be'ein arech. Number 6, hislapshus. This word was used to say that in ilah v'olul, the ilah has to apply itself to the olul. The teacher applies itself to the student. The intellect has applied itself to the emotion in order to generate the emotion. So the word hislapshus, in English, would be either to apply or to engage, where one has to sort of invest itself, clothe itself in the other. Hislapshus would be like the famous story with the Rebbe Marash. The Rebbe Marash used to have yichidus like every other Rebbe. People come in, go out, come in, go out. In the middle of the yichidus, it was all stopped. And he called his secretary and he said, I want to change my shirt, bring me a different shirt. Okay, he brought a different shirt. The Rebbe changed, gave him that shirt, and the shirt he was wearing was drenched. And he was shocked. Like, I mean, this is drenched as if somebody was just climbing up and down a mountain. I mean, carrying heavy things, perspiring, sweating from what? He's sitting in the room and nothing's happening. He's talking to people, that's all. So he asked the Rebbe Marash, what is this from? You were sitting here sort of in a relaxed position, not running, not climbing. So the Rebbe said to him, when someone comes to me, I don't remember these exact examples, but I'll use them. But I think there were some examples he gave. Let's say a farmer comes to me and he asks me a question and he wants me to give him advice. In order for me to give advice, I have to really understand his perspective. So I have to put on his clothes to understand where he's coming from. Then I understand his question properly. But in order to answer him, I can't look at it from his perspective. I have to go back to my perspective. So I have to take off his clothes and put on my clothes, and I answer him. Next person that walks in is a Rosh Hashiva, and he has a question. In order to answer him, I have to put on his clothes and look at things from his perspective, and then I have to take that off and go back to put on my clothes from my perspective. I mean, the next person that walks in, let's say, is a doctor. So I have to put on his clothes. He goes on and on. So imagine if 100 people and 100 times you put on and you take off your clothes, it causes you to perspire. That's called hislapshus. Literally, hislapshus comes from the word levush, garment. You're clothing yourself as a verb. You're investing yourself into that person. In our case, it means that the way the Iyar creates the others by investing itself, applying itself, allowing the recipient to feel my presence. In Yesh Mi Ayin, it's not like that. The Ayin is distant and the Yesh doesn't feel the Ayin. So that's the opposite of Islapshus. Okay, we'll now go to chapter 13. The second type of avodah, which means a person who davens and also meditates and chassidus and godliness and generates certain feeling. But this person, his davening doesn't lead to generate feelings of simcha, but the b'chinas shiflus davke, b'chinas marirus arachukai. But this causes feelings of humility, or feelings of bitterness because he's distant from Hashem. We know that in Chassidus, we just finished saying that davening is not allowed to be something where you feel down or depressed. And we know from Tanya, the famous 3 chapters, 26, 27, 28, that atzvus, which is sadness or depression, these are things that are contrary to godliness. Godliness to what Hashem wants. Hashem's presence can be in a place where there's sadness. So this is not sadness that he's talking about. This is marirus. Marirus means that he feels bad. We use the word bitterness. He feels bad that he's distant from Hashem. And these are feeling, and the difference with the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, I'm sure you all learned it, but just to go it over, is sadness or depression is feeling bad in a way that has no chayus to it, no energy to it. It's just, on the contrary, these are feelings that drain a person's energy, and all you want to do is go to sleep. You don't want to go out, you don't want to do anything, you don't want to be involved. People have to schlep you out because you just want to be withdrawn into yourself, because your chayus, you lose your chayus. Marirus actually generates a lot of chayus. And the chayus that it generates is to do something, not to be so distant from Hashem. It's a different kind of feeling.
But sometimes the prayer, it like takes you out of your like misery. Like after you pray, you feel good because you're binding to Hashem. You're one with God.
So that's the davening that brings simcha. Great.
Is this,
In fact, if a person, what?
is this like ratzo and shuv? Like one is like joy or like clinging, and then the other one
It is
drawing.
in a certain way, yes. I want to say, by the way, there's a thin line between marirus and atzvus, between depression, which is negative, and this feeling, which is positive, very thin line. And you can easily slip. So anybody who knows that they have sort of a weakness, that when they start thinking about such thoughts, in order to feel more humility or more bitterness, and they know that they're very susceptible and very easily could slip into depression, should probably not go down that path, should use a different path. I saw where someone writes to the Rebbe that, a chassid is trained that once in a while you have to make a cheshbon nefesh, to think about, make a little an account, take take stock of my life, what I'm doing right, what am I doing wrong, what should I continue doing, what is something that I have to repair, correct. And the person, and Chassidus, it says in Tanya that some people do this once a month, some people do it once a week, some people do it every single night before going to bed. Initially, that's the right time. Every night before the day is over, I think about how my day went and how tomorrow could be a better day. I know, and then if that's too much, you do it once a week at the end of the week, like Thursday night. And if that's too much, you do it once a month at the end of the month. Everybody does it at the end of the year in the month of Elul. But this person wrote to the Rebbe that when they do this Cheshbon HaNefesh, they find themselves getting very sad and down, and as a result of that, this interferes with their Yiddishkeit in general. The Rebbe writes back, stay away from making a Cheshbon HaNefesh, at least for a while. In other words, if this is what it's doing to you, then you can't go there. You'll choose a different path how to serve Hashem, not with this path. So when you talk about Merirus, again, it's a feeling that's full of life, a feeling that has a lot of drive to it. But what's driving me to do what I'm doing is because I feel distant. And that's what's driving me to do everything I can to come closer to Hashem.
Rabbi Majeski,
Mm-hmm.
you were speaking yesterday about different spheres and how like some of them like pull you closer and some of them pull you
Pulling
further.
back, right.
Is that like a similar idea with this?
Yep. In other words, the first one, Simcha, it's a little bit like Hannah just said about Ratzu Shuv. Simcha is really connected to Ava. If you remember at the end, he said, this is the Avodah of Ava. Simcha is when you're excited about someone, happy about someone, that's an expression of the love and the connection. Merirus and humility is feelings where you move away. In other words, you're feeling overwhelmed by something, and you feel that you want to get closer. But it's based and it's driven by that feeling that I'm distant. This is the meaning of the famous song, Tzama L'cha Nafshi. Rebbe always explained what do the words mean. Tzama L'cha Nafshi, my soul thirsts for you. Be'eretz Tziyah v'oyev, like in the desert. In other words, David HaMelech said that when he was in the desert, meaning that begashmius, when a person is in a city, in a place which is settled, and you didn't drink water for a while, and you realize that you're thirsty. You're thirsty. When you're in a desert and you realize that you're thirsty, you're much more thirsty, and you sort of panic about the thirst because there's no water anywhere around. What's going to happen? So the desire for water in a desert is so much more intense than the desire for water in a city. Spiritually speaking, when a person is distant from Hashem for whatever reason, there's a very strong thirst, an intense feeling of I want to be close. And David HaMelech was saying, halavai, that I should have that same intense feeling of desire for Hashem when I'm close, like I used to have when I was far. So, generally speaking, being distant makes a person feel that desire to connect much more than when someone is close. And these are the feelings that we're talking about. I know when the person conducts himself as a master of accounting. This is a quote, a phrase, I think it comes from the Zohar. Mori de Chujbana. Just like there's people who say this one is a master of halacha, this one is a master of Gemara, this one's a master of good character traits. So here's a term: he's a master of Mori de Chujbana, which means he mastered the art of making a cheshbon hanefesh, of making an account. You might remember, because we spoke about this in the beginning of the Tishrei time, that there is I don't know where the source is, that is another little twist to what does it mean a master of accounting, is there's two ways of making an accounting, which means if you have a business and the accountant comes, he sits down in your office and looks over your books and tells you how you're doing. Could you imagine the accountant comes and tells the owner of the business, in this last quarter of the year, your business had a loss of $500,000. The owner turns white, holding on to the table, trying to contain himself not to faint. The accountant is as calm as ever. How's that possible? He's the one who read this. He's the one who made the calculations. He came to the conclusion first, and he's calm. And the other guy is hearing it from the accountant, and he's ready to faint. The answer is because he's the balabas. It's his business. The accountant's just making calculations. So that's another thing. What Marad Chushba means, when you make the accounting, do it like a master, like the owner, not like a stranger coming to make an account. Because a person can make an accounting and okay, let's go next. Let's make an accounting. Think of the thoughts, the actions, the words that came out of my mouth that were not directed to Hashem. We're not talking about forbidden. Remember, I keep reiterating that the Rebbe Rashab is describing not an ordinary individual there. He's describing a real chassid, someone who's on a higher level, and he's not really concerned about actions that were aveirus because he doesn't go there. But what? Thinking about things that are permissible, but he's not doing it with the right intention. Shem gam kinra, and that's also inappropriate. As we know, it says in Tanya that something which a person does, speaks, thinks, which is not connected to Hashem, even though it's not an aveira, but it's still, that's called klipas noga. So number one, he thinks about that. What did I do that's negative? And that's one thought. Then there's another thought. Gam basis hatayv. He thinks about the good that he does. He learns Torah. He observes mitzvahs. But is it really the way it should be? What does it mean? Not the way it should be. I put on tefillin. I put on tzitzit. I put up a mezuzah. I eat matzah, shaking lulav and esrog. I heard the shofar. So he's going to explain what does it mean, not the way it could be. In other words, what he's going to explain here is doing mitzvahs. Of course, action is what counts, but every person is in a sense expected to do mitzvahs according to their capacity. There's that famous vart, everyone always quotes this in the name of Reb Zusha, that he said that when his neshama goes up after 120 and he's going to be standing in front of the heavenly court, he's not concerned that they're going to say, Zusha, why weren't you like Avraham Avinu? Why weren't you like Moshe Rabbeinu? Not worried about that. He's worried they might say, Zusha, why weren't you Zusha? In other words, everyone has their potential. So, for example, if a person gives $1,000 of tzedakah every month, is that a good thing or not such a good thing? $1,000 a month? It's amazing. If you find him, send him to me. But the question is, what if he's a person that his annual income is $1 million a year? So $1,000 a month is tzedakah, but it's not the way it should be. Someone who makes $1 million should be giving more money for tzedakah. Someone who makes average income $1,000 is a lot of money. So just like it applies to tzedakah, the same applies with learning, with davening, with mitzvahs. It's known the whole mitzvah yesh ba kavana pratis ba'avodah. It's known that every mitzvah has a specific purpose in a person's divine service. For example, tefillin. When a man puts on tefillin, the purpose of tefillin is l'shabed halev hamayach, to dedicate the mind and the heart to serve Hashem. Shemoiche v'libe yilavai levade, that the mind and the heart should be directed to Hashem alone. And in fact, that is what we're supposed to be thinking when a man puts on tefillin, that I'm putting on my arm, even though it's on the arm, it's supposed to be on the left hand, and it's pointing to the heart. You probably are able to recognize these little differences, but when a man puts on tefillin, it's not standing out like that, it's actually pointing this way, because it's supposed to point to the heart. Of course, the question is, if it's the heart, why don't we put tefillin on the heart? Take the tefillin, tie it around the heart. And if the reason is because it looks funny, believe me, putting on the arm looks just as funny. So the answer is, because the heart isn't good enough either. The heart has to lead to action. So we put on the arm, which represents action, but corresponding to the heart. So on the brain, you put on the head, corresponding to the brain. It's supposed to be that spot that connects to the brain. And on the heart. So that's the purpose of this mitzvah. Dalad minim, when I do the mitzvah of lulav and esrog, Heim Shir B'chinas Achdus. That's about unity. As we know when we learn about Sukkos, that the Elulav and the Esrog is all about unity. That there are four species, four different kinds of things here: the Lulav, the Esrog, the Arava, and the Hadassim. You remember, it's four different kinds of Yidden. The Lulav is something that is a palm tree, but it has dates growing on it. And dates, they have a taste, but they have no smell. On the other hand, then we have Hadassim that has a pleasant odor, but it doesn't have any taste. Then we have Aravis that has no taste and no odor. Then we have the Esrog that has a taste and an odor. And the way it's explained is that it represents four categories of Yidden. One category is someone who's dedicated to Torah and to mitzvahs, that's the Esrog. One category is someone who has not dedicated, not to Torah, not to mitzvahs, that's the Arava. Another category that is dedicated to Torah, but not to mitzvahs, that's the Lulav. And the fourth category is someone dedicated to mitzvahs, but not so much to Torah, and that's the Hadassim. And we do is we bind them all together to show that we're all united, we're all one, regardless of our differences. So that means when a person does the mitzvah, what they're accomplishing internally is developing this attribute of achdus, of unity, exactly what the Maimer is talking about. And that's the kavanah of the mitzvah, which means every mitzvah is supposed to be refining me in a specific way. It's supposed to refine a certain part of my character. So the mitzvah of tefillin refines my brain and refines my heart. Lulav and Esrog refines this nature in me of uniting. Esrog, specifically another thing about the Esrog is Rashatevis. It's an acronym for Al Tvieni Regel Gaiva. So I wanted to show this to you inside. See if I could find it here. It's a pasuk in Tehillim, and literally it means, don't let me have any arrogance. Regel Gaiva means even the foot. In other words, even a small measure of arrogance. Maybe I didn't make a copy. Well, it's a pasuk in Tehillim, and yes, we do. It's on page 53. You can see the pasuk. Next time you say this chapter, you'll know what to be thinking. Do not let the foot of arrogance come to me, which means even a little bit of arrogance shouldn't come to me. So the first word is Aleph. The second word starts with a Tuf. The third is a Resh, and the fourth is a Gimel. Spells Esrog. Any connection between the two things? Number one, that the four minim are about unity, and the Esrog is about Gaiva, arrogance. I'm saying the Esrog and the Lulav all four together, that's supposed to bring me to have more the property, the trait of uniting, right? Achdus. The Esrog specifically is about humility, not having Gaiva. So I'm asking, is there any connection between these two things?
Between unity and
What?
Between unity and humility? Yes.
What's the connection?
I mean, feelings of unity leads to humility because you realize that you're part of the whole, and so you're not separate.
Okay, any other way of explaining it? Think, everybody, think. Think so hard there'll be smoke coming out.
Similar to what we were talking about, the book of Tehillim, how because all of the spheres wanted to just be the main star, they wouldn't include each other.
Right, isn't that the essence of the whole Maimer? That the reason why there's a lack of unity is because of arrogance, because of yeshus. So yesh is what prevents people from being united, and humility is what allows people to be united. Yep. I think I mentioned it the other day, that the Gemara says that in the Beis Hamikdash, they would be standing squashed together. Because imagine everybody in the whole world, any Yid came together on Yantiv, all in this one place, the Beis Hamikdash. They were squeezed more than 770. When the Beis Hamikdash, you're supposed to bow down. Bow down, you need much more space. Gemara says this is one of the miracles. When they stood, they were squashed to pieces. When they came to bow down, everyone had space to bow down. So the Chassidic interpretation that is, when you bow down, which means when you have bittul, then there's space for everybody. So every mitzvah has something like this. Every single mitzvah has something like this. In fact, in the dorm, we have a seder, mainly in the winter, that every Friday night after candlelighting, the girls study Sefer HaChinuch, which is a sefer that lists all the mitzvahs. And the reason for that is actually came from the Rebbe himself. I wrote into the Rebbe that the girls light candles, and after candlelighting, they learn together. I don't remember what they were learning. And the Rebbe wrote back, they should learn Sefer HaChinuch. And it was really interesting because that was the time where the Rebbe introduced them to learn Rambam. And the Rambam has a book of mitzvahs. But the Rebbe specifically pointed out to learn this Sefer of mitzvahs, the Chinuch. What's unique about this Sefer? He gives a reason for every single mitzvah, whatever. Of course, we know that it's beyond our understanding, but at least to some extent, what could we understand? And his main reason is to show how every mitzvah has an effect somewhere, someplace on refining something in my personality. Each mitzvah is something. So that's the difference between one mitzvah and the other. Then there's another intention, and that is not the specific area where this mitzvah refines me specifically, but something which is so the common denominator of all mitzvahs. When I do a mitzvah, it's an expression of me accepting Hashem's sovereignty. Like the Alter Rebbe writes in Perik Mamalef, these two kavanas, the specific mitzvah, the specific difference between one mitzvah and another mitzvah, it's unique to each mitzvah, and the general kavana, which is connected to all mitzvahs. And the Rebbe points out that's why we see that in the bracha for a mitzvah. There's one part of the bracha that is the same for all mitzvahs. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvoseh v'tzivanu is for the same for lulav, same for shofar, same for lichbench, and same for kiddush. It's always the same. At the end, we say something specific. Al natilas yadayim, al natilas lulav, lahadlik ner Shabbos, and so on. That means that there's two kavanas. One is the general kavana, and the other is the specific kavana. So what he's going to conclude is, what does it mean doing mitzvahs properly? The actual act, you do what it says. There's not much of a difference between one person's tefillin and the other. But how much, what's going on in my mind and my heart when I put on the tefillin? How much am I concentrating on this area? How much does it affect me in terms of being a more refined person? That depends from one person to the next, where the difference is. Moshe Rabbeinu put on the same tefillin we put on. But his kavanah when he put it on was way, way beyond anything that we could think. Okay, to be continued. We'll stop up here.
Thank you.
Page 100. Yeah.
I didn't want to take it. What was your ticket?
Whatever, I go down and ask for one. Plastic one. Huh? You have a plastic bag?
Chicken.